Let's say you are a psychotherapist and you're sitting across from a client of yours and they're doing something. They're sitting quietly, or perhaps they're crying softly, or maybe they're sobbing. Maybe they're telling you how depressed or how anxious they are, or maybe they raise their voice in anger, or they're telling you about an argument they've had with someone important in their life. How do you know what to do next? How can you be most responsive to what that client needs at that moment in time? Well, you have many choices, drawing from all you've learned from your reading, your past experiences with clients, perhaps your own therapy. You could ask a question, but what question? You could sit silently. You could introduce an exercise of some kind. You could offer psychoeducation. You could suggest that what the client is experiencing fits a pattern you've discussed in prior sessions. But what is the best thing to do now? My pondering of this question is a primary reason I wrote a book that has just been published by the American Psychological Association. It's called Psychotherapy Case Formulation, now in its second edition. Now, I don't know that we ever know what the absolute best thing to do is, but I do think we stand a better chance of doing the right thing if, when choosing what to do, we draw from a systematically and collaboratively developed, evidence-based, culturally responsive psychotherapy case formulation. Systematic in that it covers the information that we need when we provide psychotherapy, such as what are the problems we're focused on, what are the goals we aim to achieve, what diagnosis fits the problem, what is our best explanation of the origins of those problems and why they persist, and what is the plan for treating those problems in light of the explanation. Collaborative in that we have developed the formulation with the client as part of our effort to build a strong therapeutic alliance with that person. Evidence-based in that it draws from the best research, not only in psychotherapy, but in psychological science more broadly, as well as clinical expertise. Culturally responsive in that it recognizes the cultural milieu in which the client was raised and currently lives, in that it recognizes how those cultural factors influence the client's view of themselves and others and of society. The premise of the book is that if we have a systematic, collaboratively developed, evidence-based, culturally responsive formulation, we are more likely to do the right thing in therapy. So, returning to the scenario I asked you to imagine, let's suppose your client is a man in his early 30s and that he's engaged to be married. He says he loves his fiancée, but he worries whether he will be a good husband and father. He worries about his finances, even though he makes a good living. He says he's been anxious all his life, that he unwinds with a few drinks most evenings, and that he also has frequent headaches, GI distress, and that his mind sometimes just goes blank, including at work. He tells you there were no major traumas in his childhood, that his mother was loving, but also sometimes critical in ways he could not predict. She expected him to get outstanding grades in school and sometimes took privileges away when he didn't. He describes his father as passive and aloof, as a man who always seemed to be trying to please his mother and to avoid conflict. And he tells you that his parents divorced just as he entered his teens. Now, let's do a quick formulation. Let's suppose your problem list includes persistent anxiety, worry, inability to relax, ambivalence about marriage, and possible excessive drinking. Let's suppose your diagnosis is generalized anxiety disorder. Now, let's think about the explanatory hypothesis component of formulation. Here's one possibility. The client has a wish to be a good father and husband, but does not want to repeat his parents' failed marriage. He does not want his fiancée to become critical and controlling as he perceives his mother to be. And he does not want to be passive and aloof like his father. He does not want a divorce after a few years of marriage. As a result of this conflict and perhaps a biological predisposition, he is chronically anxious, ambivalent, and emotionally over-controlled. You might also notice the strengths your client has, his intelligence and good work history. You might note potential obstacles that could interfere with treatment success. Perhaps he may not be willing to confront his anxiety in the therapy. Or perhaps he'll see you, the therapist, as potentially critical, as his mother was, or as passive and aloof, as his father was. Now let's consider another possible explanatory hypothesis. And it goes as follows. Your client experiences automatic thoughts related to his perceived present and future inadequacy as a husband and parent, and maybe just as a person. He views himself as unlovable and as unable to control his environment. The world to him seems unpredictable and the future bleak. Therefore, the safest response is to withdraw and comply. So these are just two possible explanatory hypotheses, but others could be developed. And we haven't talked about culture in this scenario, but it may make a difference if your client were white or black or Hispanic, or if they were raised in, let's say, a Catholic or a Jewish household, or one in which religion did not play a big role, or if they were raised in an affluent environment or one that was more economically disadvantaged. Now, suppose your plan, based on the first explanatory hypothesis, is to encourage your client to explore the origins of his anxiety and ambivalence about marriage in his parents' marriage, and to recognize that he does not need to replicate that scenario, that his mother is not his, rather his fiancée is not his mother, and that will affect what you do next. Or, based on the second explanatory hypothesis, your plan may be to engage in psychoeducation about the cognitive model of anxiety and then explore evidence for his automatic thoughts about his inadequacy as a partner and parent, and about the cost of interpersonal withdrawal. And then you may want to engage with him in relaxation exercises. That plan also affects what you choose to do next. The point here is that as a therapist, you have many choices about what to do next in therapy, and that a case formulation can provide a critical guide so you are most responsive to your clients on a moment-to-moment basis. The book I'm publishing with APA gets into many details of what we've just discussed: how to develop a comprehensive problem list, strengths and limitations of diagnosis, multiple explanatory hypotheses to consider, each of them distilled from research, and how to go about developing a treatment plan. The second edition is thoroughly revised with up-to-date research and theoretical considerations. It describes a highly adaptable and evidence-based framework for conceptualizing clients and planning treatment. It is designed to be adaptable to any single theoretical orientation, as well as to an integration of multiple orientations. And we know from surveys that most therapists practice within an integrative framework, so it's designed to adapt to how most therapists say they practice psychotherapy. It's also designed to be applicable to both straightforward and more complex cases. Now, I don't want to leave you with the impression that case formulation is an onerous task, one that takes a great amount of time, or that it is something the therapist just writes down and then sets aside. Instead, it is a lens through which you can understand your clients. It is a process, not a product. And as a process, formulations may need to be revised and adapted as the therapy unfolds. I hope this has been helpful and that you'll check out the book so you can know better what to do next in psychotherapy.